Prisco talking about Kentucky cornerback Maxwell Hairston. Sal and I were talking during the break, and you were saying, like, I'm not all the way there on, like, the names of the guys yet in the Bills' range. This is one that, you're going to hear a lot about, I think, Hairston. And corner, I'm hearing your voice tell me, like, remember, they still really don't have an obvious one anyway, starting cornerback. So is it Maxwell Hairston? Is it Amos, another one from Ole Miss? Those are, I think, the names. It's not going to be Travis Hunter.
No, and I think when you look at a guy like Will Johnson of Michigan, way too high, obviously. If he starts to fall, is there someone – Brandon Beane has traded up, right? Will Johnson, Jedi Barron. Are these guys with Barron? I believe he's more of a slot guy. But a guy like Will Johnson, let's say, if he starts to fall a little bit, you just talked about Maxwell Hairston. Maybe he's available at 30. Does he make a move like he has 2 of the last 3 years? Kyer Elam, Dalton Kincaid. And actually, he moved last year, but the other way. Went down and ultimately drafted Keon Coleman. But we know that Brandon Beane is willing to trade up if there's a guy there that he likes. And I think that's the kind of position this year that maybe they would do it for.
We should talk about that, too. I did some on this yesterday because I guess One Bills Live did why trade up, or not why, but what about it is why you would do it. It was sort of like slanted toward what are your reasons for wanting them to trade up if that's how you feel. And, I mean, I'm just militant about it. Never do it. Quarterback, maybe. Only exception. Never do it. With respect to Beane, Elam and Kincaid were both moving up 2 spots and giving up a 4th-round pick to do it. Mm-hmm. You've had that chart where they only have made 3 4th-round picks since 2018.
It really is amazing, yeah.
So, I don't know, like, to me that's not good math. But, it's not real life, but in fantasy, you sort of, it gets close and you get excited about a player and you just don't want to risk it. I'm moving up 2 spots. Maybe there's some intel. It was Dallas with Kincaid that they thought maybe Dallas was going to take him. They jumped over Dallas to take Kincaid, and maybe that's right. Maybe they should just let that happen and draft Laporta or whoever. Like, I don't know. I'd rather have the 4th-round pick than move the 2. It's been both. James Cook was trading down twice in the 2nd round, and they got a 6th each time to do that. And I would guess, maybe this or different, that they wanted Cook, and they thought that was going to be attainable even by moving down twice.
That was the year that they lost out on J.D. McKissick, and they were looking for a back with that skill set. So I wouldn't doubt that they really liked James Cook for that. Now, granted, he wasn't as great of a receiver in his first couple of years, but he's obviously turned out into a good all-around back. But that was that year that happened, if you remember. If you remember back to the Kyer Elam year, Mike, one of the things that happened was the Chiefs traded up. The Chiefs traded up for Trent McDuffie.
McDuffie, right.
And I wonder, yes, it's all anecdotal, and it's all, you could do this, spin yourself in 100 different ways. But what if the Bills had traded up for McDuffie? And right? And instead of Kyer Elam, because I think,
no, how dare you?
I really believe they really liked Trent McDuffie, and they wanted him. But the Chiefs traded up first. They got him. So now you get in a position where, we really need to take a corner here. Who's next on our board? You go up and get Elam. But if they trade up and get McDuffie, maybe it's a different conversation.
I'm going to say something that I don't think anybody has ever said. And I'm glad you're sitting down because it's going to be controversial. I'm sick of the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I'm sick of the Chiefs. Okay, so are we Charlie Brown and the football and they're Lucy or something like this? So that McDuffie point, that it's worthy. Oh, sure, whatever. It's good math. We'll trade out, and it's worthy. This year, I did this yesterday, looking at the work of Pro Football Network. Bills 30, Chiefs 31 in the first round, and their top need is defensive tackle. So get ready. Get your boots on. If you want Kenneth Grant or, Walter Nolan or one of these guys, and there's some thirst for defensive tackles, which there is. Philadelphia also at 32. Like, there's a handful of teams in that bottom, say, quarter of the first round that are like kind of, it makes sense. And the position is rich this year. You might have to figure out an end around on Kansas City again. I mean, not that hasn't really worked out yet. It hasn't happened yet. But anyway, it's just to say that, like, the Chiefs are your competition
Right.
Again, you pick in front of them, but that's for now.
Because they've already shown that they'll be willing to move up. And if they are interested in the same position, that could happen again. The Bills have 3 picks in the top 62. They have 2 second-rounders. I would be stunned, as I sit here today, if more than one went to the offensive side. I think it's either 3 defense, no offense, or 2 defense, 1 offense. And that's, even then, I mean, you could make an argument it should be all 3 defense. I'm thinking back to what Brandon Beane said on Ryan Fitzpatrick's podcast last week with Andrew Whitworth as well, and he said, right out, as of right now, we're probably focused going to have more picks on defense. But in those first 3 picks, I think you're looking defense. It's defensive tackle and it's corner, I think easily, in with it two of the first 3 picks.
It's not saying much. I'd like to have a third. The third is kind of a fun leverage round where, you've got day 3 is more just like let's fill the roster together, but you still have some premium players, second round, third round, and then, you want to move around a little bit. A third would be nice. You can do it with 2 fourths or a fourth and a fifth. Maybe the Bills do something like that. There's been plenty of that, as you know, over the years, or by moving out of round 2.
Right. Would you rather them move down from round 2 to get in back to round 3?
Yes.
Or move up one of the – you have 2 fourths and 3 fifths.
I know. I want to use them all. I'm always down. You don't have to ask me. My answer is always down.
I get it, but they have 10 picks. Are you picking 10? I know more dart throws, right? No doubt, more dart throws.
Yes,
but it's also more guys that aren't going to make your roster probably that you're taking. That you might wind up just saying it was a kind of a wasted pick because somebody else can take them when you waive them.
I don't think that's a wasted pick. I wouldn't measure it by like how many make the team. We've had this conversation. The bad teams have say they have 10. Say New England has 10 picks. More of them are going to make it. Because they have more needs. Doesn't mean the players are better.
Agreed.
It just means like we have to rebuild, right? So, yeah, I'd rather just have the Bills have shown to have a propensity. Like they can identify the talent. I can coach this guy, even in the late rounds. They've had it at receiver. They've had it in Benford's case. Like they've had that. Just give me the more shots at it. And if that means 5 players don't make the roster, I don't think that's a loss.
What's funny to me is last year, I don't remember how many they had going into the draft last year, but they came out with 10.
Yeah.
They picked 10 guys last year. Now, it was a bit of a reset last year because they got rid of a bunch of guys, veterans on the roster. We know Micah Jordan, Tre'Davious White, those guys, Saran Neal, Mitch Morse. So maybe they're in a different position, but I remember thinking last year, if you would have said to me, over or under the Bills picking 9 guys, I would have said under. They're not going to pick 10 guys. They did. They picked 10 last year. So who knows? Maybe they do it again this year. But
I probably did ask you that.
Yeah, the roster is a little bit younger now, so I don't know if there's quite as much room to do that for some of these guys. But they do have 10 picks as of right now.
Well, how many made it? Coleman, Bishop, Carter. Several of them did make it. Your top guys are always going to make it. You're not going to cut them out of camp, right?
Top guys you're not going to. I'll give you here it is. Travis Clayton actually made the roster as the swing tackle.
Ray Davis.
I'm sorry, not Travis Clayton. Tylon Grable. Apologies. Tylon Grable made it as the swing tackle. Travis Clayton was the international pathways guy who went on injured reserve.
Jane Granger made the team.
They all here. Every one of them did except for Daquan Hardy did not.
Olafosio made the team.
Yep. Daquan Hardy did not, and Travis Clayton did not.
Solomon.
So 8.
Do we do this or does Zach do this?
I can do it.
Let's talk to Glenn here. Hi, Glenn. Welcome.
Good afternoon, guys. I had an opportunity to watch the Combine completely and was really impressed with the wide receivers coming out. Given that I understand the need for defensive line help and cornerback, could you see a scenario where, again, they go back to their first selection being a wide receiver?
This is a really interesting and good question, Glenn, that Matt Bove and I have debated a lot on It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. He is on the side of he thinks wide receiver is much more in play than I believe wide receiver is in play, Mike, with the first-round pick. And here's why. I understand, and I would say, Glenn, that no doubt if there's a really good wide receiver, it could help this offense. But I think about how they operate and what they think about, Mike, which is I don't know where he's playing right away, and even though they need still like a speed guy, let's say, where is he? He's the 5th guy if he gets drafted now. Maybe 4th at best. I just don't see them doing that.
I can't see them using a late first on a receiver.
I can't either.
I don't think it's the year for it either.
No.
I mean, there are a couple of guys who are tempting, but doesn't sound to me like there's that much difference between certain second or third round options. I've decided
Agreed.
who I like. Io Manor from Stanford. He's the one I like. So that might be round 2 at the earliest. I tend to doubt it. Everything about this, the history, the way the season ended up playing out, the draft class, the respective, everything points to defense. Thanks, Glenn. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog at Roswell Park. Rideforroswell.org for more. There'll be a lot of people in here, whether it's a ballroom or not, coming up in a